Shabbat Shalom. This is Daniel John Lee with Torah Restoration Ministries. I'm going to try to get these parts out, these 17 parts out on the Sabbaths, either Friday night or Saturday, sometime during the day. That's my heart. That's my goal. I'm going to do the best I can. I have very, very busy weeks with work and everything, so I'm often very tired when I get to Shabbat, and then I have fellowship that I go to and ministry. But that's my goal, and that's what I'm going to try to do. And who knows, maybe I'll even be able to do it more frequently than every Shabbat. But nevertheless, this is the first part, the introduction to the 17-part series that I sort of gave a preview for a little bit ago. And this is the series that I'm making that's called Messiah and Paul, Reconciling Their Teachings. Something that's really been on my heart, that Yah's put on my heart, and this is just born out of love. I mean, I really just want to see the bride of Messiah understand that in no way do the teachings of Messiah and Apostle Paul contradict, and they're all geared toward us pursuing that everlasting and very simple gospel, which is simply just to hearken and obey, to just do what His Word says. It's so simple that even a child can understand. So I'm breaking this down into 17 parts because there's a lot of tricky things when it comes to understanding what Apostle Paul is writing and saying. And I just want to make sure this is very, very clear. So this first part is called the three main principles. These are principles rooted in either Messiah's teachings or what is said about Paul's writings that must be kept in mind as we go through this series and as you personally read the letters of Apostle Paul. The first principle can be found in Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 20. Sermon on the Mount. And it says, this is Yahshua, of course, speaking, the Messiah, and he says, "Think not that I come to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I come not to destroy, but to fulfill." That word fulfill means literally to revive, to fill up, to show how to properly obey. So remember, in that statement is rooted a lot of things. The Pharisees and Sadducees, they had forgotten many of the main hearts of Torah: mercy, judgment, faith, love, these things. And now Yahshua, Jesus, had come to show us how to properly obey the Torah through a heart of love, which is always what the intention was. "For verily I say unto you, until the heavens and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the Torah till all be fulfilled and accomplished." Now, we look at this statement, and again, it's not that he's being complicated. He's being very simple and straightforward. I still see the heavens above me. I still see the earth beneath me, right? We all see that. And Messiah said, and as long as these things are still here, every jot, every tittle of the Torah is still in place. Now, there will come a time when the heavens and earth will pass away. That will come. And then you will definitely see certain parts of Torah pass away. But that's still in the future. Verses 19, "Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments in the Torah, and shall teach men so, he shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach even the least commandments, even the smallest commandments in Torah, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Do you want to be known as least by your master, or do you want to be known as great by your master? We want to please Yahshua, right? That's our whole goal. "For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven." So again, the scribes and Pharisees in many ways were keeping a lot of the smaller, or what we call the least commandments of Torah, but they were mixing it up with a lot of their own vain traditions that were actually contradicting huge parts of Torah. So we want to at least accomplish what the Pharisees did have, but of course we want to go beyond that. We want to have that love and the fruits of the Spirit and the things that they were lacking. So this is the first principle to remember in reading Apostle Paul's letters. That, remember, the same Spirit of Yah that filled Yahshua also filled Apostle Paul. So anything he writes is going to fall in line with the words of Messiah. The second principle that goes along with this is found in Matthew 23:23, where Yahshua is rebuking the Sadducees and Pharisees. He says, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the Torah, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought you to have done, and not leave the other undone." You see that? He's not criticizing the tithing. He's not criticizing wearing the tzitzit. He's not criticizing circumcision or these, what we would call maybe the least commandments. He's not criticizing those things. What he's telling the Pharisees and Sadducees is, you left out the big parts, the faith, the mercy, the judgment. And then he very clearly says, I would have you have done these things and not leave the other things undone. So he wants all, or as much as possible, to be done in our culture. That should be our heart. It's so simple. He wants all to be done. But the problem in the first century was they were leaving out these main pillars of Torah. So that really goes along with Matthew 5:17 through 20 as well. Matthew 5:17 through 20. So that's principle number 2, Matthew 23:23. And then the third principle to keep in mind, especially as we're going through Apostle Paul's letters, it can be found in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 16. Where Peter, he's commenting about all of Paul's letters, and he says, "As also in all of Paul's epistles, speaking in them of these things, in which some things are hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned and unstable wrest as they do also the other scriptures unto their own destruction." So Peter says, look, I mean, some of Paul writes in very long sentences, so sometimes it's easy to take things out of context, and he was a very, very intelligent guy, a master of Torah. He came from a very learned background. Yet, once he was converted, he had a heart just burning for Messiah, so in love with Yahshua. And yet Peter says, look, be careful. You really got to be careful, because those who are unstable, those who don't know what they're doing, who are unlearned, they will twist what Paul's saying unto their own destruction. So those three principles are very important to keep in mind as we're going forward, as we're reading these scriptures. There's something else that just came into my mind too. This is sort of I guess an addition that I want to put into this thing, and that is, there is this myth that somehow it's impossible to obey, keep the commandments, to do the things that Yah has laid out in His Word. And I just want to read out in Luke chapter 1, verse 6, where it talks about John the Baptist's parents. I'll start in verse 5. It says, "There was in the days of Herod the king of Judah a certain priest named Zacharias of the course of Abiah, and his wife was the daughter of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before Yah, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of Yahweh, blameless." So, when we're talking about His Word, His commandments, His scriptures, they are not impossible to obey at all, and we got a clear proof here, right here in the New Testament. So keep that in mind, especially because again, the whole issue as we're in this first century is that the Pharisees and Sadducees were putting in all this yoke that Peter talks about, this burdensome stuff that was completely man-made, oftentimes would contradict what the Word of Yah would say, what the commandments would say, and truly was a burden. It was a mechanism of control that they would use on the people, and not even they could keep all these little things that they had invented. So keep that in mind as well. All right, so this is part 1, the 3 main principles to keep in mind, and also the fact that we can't obey His Word. And hopefully this you can refer back to this video as we're going through the remaining 16 parts of this 17-part series. All right, this is Daniel John Lee with Torah Restoration Ministries. Website is spiritandtorah.com. Shabbat Shalom.